Welcome back to Hand Sewing with the HTA. In this lesson we're going to be talking about needles and threads. Alright, so when you buy needles in the UK you typically get John James needles, and they come in different sizes. Now the higher the number, the smaller the needles. So that's a size 1. And I generally use that for sewing on buttons. But I've also started using it for my sort of general tailoring and basting and stuff like that. Because it's a slightly bigger needle and a bigger eye. My eyesight isn't what it was when I was 23. So this is so that's a one long, and this in here is, or sorry, a 1 sharp, and then a 6. This is a 6 sharp, and then this one here is a 9 between. So they come in sharps and betweens, and the difference being the length of the needle. So if you got a 9 sharp, it would be longer than a 9 between. The 9 between is obviously a small needle. So I use this needle here for any kind of like hand stitching, felling of that. Tend to use this, or pick stitching, I tend to use that one as well. The 6 sharp, this one I used to always use for all of my general tailoring, basting and stuff like that, until my eyes started to leave me, and then I switched to the bigger size 1 needle for that as well. So you can switch between these two, either for general sort of sewing and that. So yeah, so sharps are long and betweens are short. And then the smaller the number, the lower the number. So this is a 1, so it's a bigger one, and then it goes all the way down to a 9, and so that's a 9 between. So the needle gets finer, and you know, because it's between, it's shorter, and then the eye then is smaller. And then with a 6 here, you can see it's a little bit thicker, slightly bigger eye, obviously a lot longer than the between. And there we have the 1. It's a much thicker needle and a bigger eye as well. So that's the different needles you're going to be using. Then when it comes to threads, the main thread that tailors use is basting cotton, and this is, as it says on this, but it's generally considered to be like a 50 cotton or a 40 cotton. And what you want to find with basting cotton is it's white and it just snaps. So it's a very it's a very weak thread, and the idea of that is that you put in basting stitches to hold parts of the garment together, and when you want to pull out the basting stitches, there's less chance of you damaging the cloth or the lining if you're using a lightweight basting cotton. These reels are pretty big. Not too sure. It's probably, yeah, it's 5,000 meters on this, so that's quite a lot of thread. So it should last you a good while. One of those cones. You can get, you can get basting cottons in like smaller reels like this one here. This is not basting cotton though. Then we have the other sort of thread that you use. I tend to use 100% cotton for my machining. It is actually quite strong. And it's quite fine as well. So I use that for sewing on my straight seams. And the reason why I use cotton thread, machine cotton, and not polyester is, and I've found this before, in my own experience, like, my clothing and that. I remember getting off like a Ferris wheel one time wearing a suit, and I got caught on something. Don't know what I got caught. The sleeve got caught on something. I heard this tear, and when I looked, the seam of the cloth had ripped. Seam had given away, and the stitches stitched together in cotton thread, the stitches had broke. Now, had my seams been sewn with something stronger like a polyester thread, the cloth would have torn. So it's much easier to fix a seam with this, sewn with cotton thread than cloth that is ripped because you've used polyester. So that brings me down to the polyester. This is polyester thread. This is a Gutermann thread, and this is quite it's thicker than the thread there. It's a little bit stronger. And but it's a really nice fine thread. A thread like this there's very little fuzz or fur on it. When you look at the thread, it's pretty clean. Whereas the cotton thread, some cotton threads can be very furry, like the basting cotton. And what happens then, as it's wearing through the needle, it could sometimes snap because it's sort of worn the thread because of the friction against the needle can wear the thread down a little. But again, this one here is pretty good. It's not that, you can break it in your hand. It would make a good alternative to the cotton. They're just being a little bit heavier than it. Then you can get other threads here. This is another polyester from Gutermann, and this is just a much finer thread, and you can feel it actually has a little bit more of a snap to it. It's a bit stronger, and again that's a finer thread. So it depends. It could also depend on what you're sewing as well. Generally, like in tailoring, we're going to be sewing lining or cloth, so either one of these threads would work well for that. I think if you're going into something like sewing parachute silk, you might want a finer thread for working with that. That takes me then to the buttonhole threads. So you can get a buttonhole thread that comes there like that. You get these ones here typically from the lining company, and that length is 10 meters, and it says right on it there, 10 meters, and that's enough to sew one coat. So that'll get you 3 buttons on the front, 8 buttons on the cuff, and 1 button on the lapel. That's just enough thread to sew all of those buttonholes. Then you can get this one here. I think this also is sold by the lining company, and this is just 30 meters. It's the same thread, it's just 30 meters in length rather than 10 meters in length. I prefer to go for the bigger spools rather than the small ones. If you're working like in the industry and you're working with like finishers and that, and you want to send out a matching thread with the job to get buttonholes put into, you'd put something like this into it, and then they get it and they've got enough thread to do that one jacket. Whereas, if you have a workshop like mine, you're putting in your own buttonholes. Sometimes I have just to have bigger reels, so you're not ordering as much. So technically this should do 3 coats, whereas that one does 1 coat. And then we have this one here. This is again 100% silk. All 3 of these threads are from Gutermann, and this one here it's a thicker thread. This is the one you get from Dugdale's, and it makes just as nice a buttonhole, but it is just a slightly thicker thread. Comes on these bigger reels, and these are what's it, 30? Oh, sorry, 300 meters on that one. So that's 300, 30, and 10. Again, this one here, actually, if you compare these side by side, it is a thicker thread than these two. But it will, you still make nice buttonholes even with a slightly thicker thread. Then that brings us to the hand sewing silk. So this is here in blue. We're going to be using blue in this demonstration when we get into the hand stitches. And it comes at 750 meters. And what you do is when you get it, you open up the bottom of it and you cut it in the middle, and then you just pull out one strand that you need. And this is pre-waxed. It used to be pure. It says it's pure silk on it, so it probably is. It says also for padding and hand stitching. It says this can be used for edge machines. So it's being used for stitching machines as well, but I don't use it for that. I just use it for the hand sewing. And as I say, this is pre-waxed, so you can just sew straight away. What they mean by pre-waxed is that hand sewing silks used to come in. It's like a tied up like a little bundle of thread, and you'd unwind it and you'd cut it, and then you'd wax it and then you'd use it. There is actually one of my earlier videos does show just show the old silk skeins and how they were used. And the thing about silk is, I'd say that this does say it's pure silk. I wouldn't be surprised if it's a synthetic silk. Silk actually just rot after 50 years. So if it's very old silk they're using, it mightn't have the strength that it needs. You could, I do know tailors that don't use silk thread, and what they do is to get a thread like this, a Gutermann thread like this, and they'll wax it and they'll use that for hand sewing, which works just fine as well. So that's it. Those are your basic needles and threads. I hope you found that informative. But that's all we have time for this lesson. Thank you for watching.